Redfall. My favorite video I ever made was this half-hour-long love letter to Dishonored, a game made by Arkane that I would class as one of my favorites of all time. It wouldn't even be the only Arkane game that I love. Prey 2017 was also, in my eyes, a one-of-a-kind experience, and at risk of hyperbole, a masterpiece. I wouldn't say I was blindly in love with Arkane's work. For example, I think Deathloop was a bit of a disappointment when compared to these two other games. But it still had that Arkane feel to it. I could look at and play Deathloop and still see that yes, this is an Arkane game. It feels like one, and I can still see their heart in it. Redfall is not an Arkane game. Do you think I'm exaggerating? I am not. I love hyperbole as a technique, but this time I legitimately don't have it in me to be hyperbolic. This game killed any sense of drama left in me. Apparently, not just in me. Bloomberg recently released a report on the development failings of Redfall by Jason Schreier. Yeah, you've probably heard of him before. And boy did that illuminate some things. Arkane Austin may as well not be Arkane anymore. You see, 70% of the staff who had worked on Prey left during the development of this trash fire, because these veteran devs weren't, quote, interested in developing a multiplayer game. So yeah, I feel justified in saying Redfall isn't an Arkane game, because there's barely anyone left at Arkane from the days when they put out games I cared about. A studio is just a name. You need the talent and the people to make it live up to its potential, and with Redfall, those people left in droves. There are numerous other issues mentioned in this report. The studio was apparently massively understaffed during development, requiring support from Roundhouse Studios and other outsourcing houses. The leads, Ricardo Bear and Harvey Smith, allegedly failed to provide clear direction to the staff, so barely anyone understood the cohesive image of what they were even making. You want to hear the real punchline? After Microsoft bought ZeniMax, some of the devs at Arkane were hoping they would, quote, cancel Redfall or let them reboot it as a single-player game. After hearing all this, would it surprise you to hear that the final product that is Redfall is maybe one of the worst experiences I have had in recent memory with a AAA game? This game has single-handedly killed any love I may have borne for Arkane and made me never look forward to one of their games again. The guy who spent half an hour filleting Dishonored and the genius of this studio. Do you realize how bad an experience has to be to cause such a fundamental shift in my opinion and view regarding this studio? Well, luckily for you, you will understand. You'll know. You're going to join me as I take you through exactly the wretched experience I had not only playing Redfall, but for the sake of being fully informed, doing every quest and side quest available in the launch version. Don't worry, I'm not dumb enough to spend money on trash fires like this, luckily, or unluckily based on my experience to follow. Redfall was available day one to Game Pass PC subscribers. Enough build up, let's dive into this bloody mess. A pathetic PC port. I feel like the first and arguably most important thing to discuss is the first issue that smacks you straight in the jaw when you launch this game and hit start. As a disclaimer, I don't have the best PC in the world, but I can run Red Dead 2 with everything set to ultra and high at a consistent 100 FPS. I feel like that game, with the level of detail and graphical fidelity it provides, is a great benchmark, as I believe most of you would agree, right? Well, Redfall, a game that looks like someone picked up a pile of dog poo and smeared it across my monitor, ran so badly that I had to turn all of the settings to low pretty much immediately just to experience a consistent frame rate. Even then, there were these random drops, sometimes when doing nothing, and having nothing resource intensive happening on screen at all that would result in some disgusting stuttering. I feel like the worst taste a game can immediately leave in your mouth is when it is technically a barely functional car crash. Redfall is that, with extra effort. Lately, I have noticed a trend in AAA of just the worst, most pathetic, low-effort, barely functional ports possible from studios with more than enough money and experience to know better. Something I assume a lot of us have taken note of as of late. Here's the thing, I was willing to give Arkane some leeway, because another of their games that I ended up really liking, Dishonored 2, launched in, for a lack of a better word, unacceptable state on PC. It ran badly at launch, really badly, and even now on a PC worse than mine, it's a hard game to run properly. So I knew that now and then Arkane would miss, technically, with their PC ports. However, I could not have had anything prepare me for just how badly this game runs. It uses all of my PC's resources constantly, when nothing is happening on screen. It is chugging along barely, and even when set to high or ultra, which I did a few times just to see, there's nothing that visually impressive going on. You compare the way this game looks to either Prey or the first Dishonored game from 2012, and you have to ask yourself, what happened? There is no excuse. There is no excuse. Do you want to know why? Because had you not played this game through Game Pass like I did, they had the gall to sell it at $70. How dare you? Arkane, ZeniMax, Microsoft, whoever was in charge of setting the price tag for this sham of a game. You are truly out of your damn mind. I have nothing else to say on the state of this port. The whole time you watch this video, you'll see just how ugly this game is and just how badly it runs. The footage will speak for itself. So let's move on. Just plain ugly. I feel like I haven't emphasized this enough, but Arkane have made in the past some of the most visually stunning and enrapturing worlds and spaces that I have ever set foot within digitally in a game. Worlds so beautiful that sometimes I would just stop mid-game and stare. Stare at the painted vistas of Dishonored or the beautiful sci-fi spaces of Prey and just think to myself, wow, look how beautiful games can be. Redfall had the opposite effect on me. The world looks just ugly. I mean, really ugly. I don't know what they were even going for here artistically. You can still see some of the art style of something like Dishonored and some of the character designs, but it feels like all of the style and beauty of those old games and their art/design is just missing. Everything looks so flat and lifeless. The two open world spaces that you're dropped into during the game are so disgusting to look at, disgusting to spend time in, just disgusting. And not in a thematically appropriate sense like something like a necromorph den in Dead Space. This was my first time playing an Arkane game where I never felt compelled to stop and stare. I was rushing as quickly as I could from map marker to map marker, trying to spend as little time in this world as possible, because there was just nothing to it. No special vibes, no gripping atmosphere, no wonders to behold in the landscape. The only slightly cool thing was the way the town of Redfall is surrounded by this wall of water that the vampires use their magic to create. But even that ends up looking bad because the game just doesn't look good at all. Oh, and if you look over the waves, there's just a void of nothingness in the distance. 'Cause yeah, no one put anything there. I have to some degree assume that because Arkane has never had to make one of these more open world spaces, the devs just didn't know how to make something so large and empty as visually attractive as their previous work. So yeah, a terrible port, an utter dog to look at. These were the first two things to strike me after hitting start. Imagine what a wonderful first impression I already had of this game just from that.
But wait!
If you ever played Dishonored, or even any of the Fallout games, you'd know that after the ending you'd get this little slideshow to explain what happened post-game, resulting from your choices and what effect you had on the world. Now these are nice little bonuses at the end of a game, where the complexity of what they cover necessitates them being kind of slideshows as opposed to full-on cutscenes. Now, imagine a game where every single cutscene is one of these slideshows. Yup, that's this one. Every cutscene is done in that style. So not only is the game butt ugly, you get the lowest effort cutscenes you will ever experience in a modern game put out by a large publisher. Redfall just never stops giving, does it? This feels bad. So, at the end of the day, I feel like I'm a simple man. I have even run a poll on the channel in the past about this. I think gameplay is the most important element of a video game, and a lot of you, according to that poll, agree. A game could be lacking in a lot of its other aspects, but if the gameplay feels good enough, then I can look past nearly any flaw to continue enjoying it. Redfall doesn't even have that to offer. In games like Dishonored, one of the best parts of the game was the powers that your character had access to, and one of the worst was the gunplay. Well, in Redfall they created a game that is a looter-shooter with some of the worst feeling, stiffest gunplay that I had ever had to force myself to deal with in years, while taking the powers that would in any other Arkane game make up one whole character and splitting them between 4. Yup, you heard that right. They took the aspect they were the complete worst at designing, gunplay, and they made that the whole point of the game. Hope you like shooting, because you're going to be doing a ton of it, and with some of the lamest feedback imaginable from your weaponry. This is no Doom. This isn't even Borderlands. It feels straight up amateurish, like I couldn't make it feel good. I tried changing my DPI, my sensitivity, my everything, looking for some sort of Goldilocks zone that you can easily find in any other FPS. Nothing ever improved in Redfall. The guns felt bad from moment one, from the first bullet I fired at some gormless cultist, and continued to feel bad for the entire rest of my playthrough. But wait, I mentioned powers, didn't I? Yes, all 4 of the characters you can choose to play as have a few abilities divided up between them. They all suck. No, really, I spent a bit of time trying all 4 just to see what they felt like. In the end, I stuck with the Vinder, simply because he was the least annoying of the 4, but we'll get there. The abilities in this game feel like such a massive step back from everything Arkane has ever made before that it honestly left me speechless. In Dishonored, your powers would work together seamlessly in the sandbox. You could stop time when someone fired their gun at you, possess them, walk them in front of their own bullet. That was the level of interactivity that sandbox offered your powers. Almost all the powers would interact with each other and elements of the sandbox in unique and completely mind-blowing ways. The abilities in Redfall all feel like a fire and forget, one button tap way to end combat just a little faster. I ended up sticking with the Vinder not just because he seemed to, at the time, be the least annoying character to pick, but also because he had a little teleporting frisbee, which meant I could get through the game faster, skip certain climb up hills or to buildings, that sort of thing. There is not a single power in this game that feels fun to use, that you feel like you are looking forward to popping out. They all feel like tools designed simply to make the horror of this experience end sooner. How to fail at an entire genre. You wanna guess what happens when you force a bunch of devs with zero experience at making A, a live service game, and B, a looter shooter to make a live service looter shooter? They fail spectacularly. For some context here, I have sunk thousands of hours into Destiny 1 and 2 put together before I finally got sick and tired of live service games and experiences and quit that series for good. However, in that time that I spent playing them, I learned real well what makes a live service loot game bad and what makes it good. Redfall sucks at literally every aspect of this genre. Again, I wish I was being hyperbolic. I launched the game and played for maybe a total of 10 minutes before I opened a box and picked up a golden rarity weapon, the rarest drops in the game. From that moment onwards, no matter if I turned my difficulty up or down, the game was instantly trivialized and turned into a joke. That gun would 2 to 3 tap almost every cultist and vampire I ever ran into. By the time it was finally dropping off due to enemies being higher level, I would find like 3 more gold rarity weapons. This is the worst loot system I have ever seen. In 10 minutes of game time, I ended up invalidating literally the entirety of the white, green, blue, and purple rarity item pools. Just like that. Why did they even make this a goddamned looter shooter when the entire weapon pool can be instantly turned to trash like this? Once you get a golden weapon, you'll never use one of the lower rarities because they are just statistically worse. So you end up picking thousands of useless weapons that you have to spend minutes at a time clearing from your inventory. The worst way to design a loot system is to have the kind of system where 90% of your loot is pointless trash that the player doesn't even want to pick up because they'll have to hold a button for a few seconds for every item to scrap it. This Bork loot table also, as mentioned, just turned the game into a joke. In my entire playthrough, I never felt challenged by this game except for a single instance that I will touch upon later. It was the most brain-dead experience of my life from a video game. I felt almost as bad as you do in an MMO when you do basic quests like go kill 5 rabbits. To make matters worse, I couldn't even fathom playing this with 3 other people. Mainly because you'd have to trick someone into touching this pile of crap, but also because if it was a trivial game by myself, having 3 other people with abilities and guns as well would just invalidate the whole thing. So, bad looter shooter, shite co-op game, and terrible live service all in one package. Great, right? I'm also going to talk about this in this section, as I don't know where else to really fit it. Redfall has you capture safe houses around the map, like a Far Cry game, and once you do, you gain access to a side mission and an underboss hunt from each safe house. I'm so glad I was going for a very in-depth experience of the game with my video because you find out when you reach your first of the major bosses that you actually have to kill all the underbosses in the area to access the main story ones. So to pad the game out, these side missions weren't optional at all. You better do them before you hit these main bosses or you'll have to go back and do them all regardless. What a shitty design decision and a way to force you to spend more time with the game when you already probably don't want to. Vampires, more like zombies. I have already touched on this a little, but I really cannot emphasize enough how little of a game there is here. It's not just mechanically too easy or a result of me having good RNG and getting rare guns almost instantly. The game is just not challenging at all. Again, even on the hardest difficulty available, which is made worse because to unlock the absolute hardest you have to beat the game once. You constantly run into groups of like maybe 4 or 5 cultists, or 2 or 3 vampires, which means about 10 seconds or less of actual gameplay anytime you enter combat. I'm not kidding. I don't know why this is the case. Maybe the game is so badly made that it can't handle having groups bigger than that on average throughout the open world. Maybe, again, the inexperience of the devs with this genre means they had no clue how to make it an engaging and challenging experience. These encounters are only made that much worse by the AI. I swear to you on my channel, I am having difficulty even now after playing through the whole game, thinking of any AI as bad as the ones here. I have had vampires and cultists literally stand there and stare at me, or turn around in circles, or just not react at all to someone dying literally within spitting range of them. Constantly I was left baffled by just how stupid the enemies in this game were. They don't compare even a little bit with the type of stuff you'd run into in Prey, where there were AI smart enough to hide among the environment, ambush you, and use legitimate tactics to overwhelm you during combat. Did Arkane seriously have all talent abandon the studio with these devs who left? Oh, and don't get me started on the main bosses. So you have 4 proper boss fights in this game, right? I feel like the best way to show you just how underwhelming these things are is to make you watch my first time running into the first major boss of the game, the Hollow Man.
Is this what you want? Very well. Look at me. Let me take care of you.
Let's add a little lightning.
What will this achieve? Let's begin. You'll be a part of it. I can't die. You can't. You wouldn't.
Need I say more? I will anyway. That was pathetic. That's how all 4 of the big bosses in this game went. I feel embarrassed for Arkane when it comes to this game. I cannot get my mind around what playing this game felt like for me. It was somewhat like watching the corpse of someone you loved be skinned and then witnessing the skin be worn by some sort of decrepit monster as it dances around with it barely hanging on, chunks slopping off at every step and bounce. But wait, earlier I mentioned an exception to never being challenged, right? Yeah, there was one, and they somehow fucked that up too. So whenever you kill enough vampires, or do enough missions, or just cause this dumb red bar to fill up in the game, this JoJo looking vampire called Rook shows up, who is just a walking tank who outputs a lot of damage quickly, and can take a lot of damage. One thing I didn't realize one of the times I caused him to be summoned was that, I don't know if it's because of the area he spawned in or what, but my weapons were too underleveled to do any damage to him. Not any of the other vampires or cultists that I'd ran into until this point, just him. So he showed up and just started kicking my shit in. Keep in mind, when you die he doesn't go away. He just keeps hunting you down until you kill him. So I actually thought I might have gotten myself softlocked by this encounter in the game. He'd showed up, and my underleveled abilities didn't do jack, and my guns would do barely any damage. I did end up figuring out what felt like a really cheap way to kill him, combining a UV weapon that is mainly used for clearing these ugly area denial gas enemies, and the stake launcher to do multiple times the damage it would in the combo. That dealt with him just fine. The problem is, after that encounter, I got so good at killing him that every single other time I ran into him, I pretty much just farmed him, as every time he died, he'd drop another leveled up gold rarity weapon. So yeah, the one slightly challenging thing I ran into was instantly turned into a joke weapon dispenser for me, further trivializing the entire rest of the game. What even is tone? I'm going to shove quite a lot into this final section of the video, mainly because this game doesn't deserve me to give these undercooked aspects their own section. It hasn't earned that from me. This game doesn't know what it wants to be tonally. The characters are like the stereotypical moron you think of when you read a BuzzFeed article. They never shut up, they constantly crack terrible one-liners like Marvel characters,
Kick them all up the arse.
They are unbearable, and even when only playing as Devinder for the whole game, I wanted to reach through my screen and strangle him. This is such a step backwards from characters like Dowd, whose every word I would hang on in Dishonored. There's nobody compelling in this game. Not one character, main, side, or villain that I felt in any way interested in while playing. It was an achievement when someone wasn't outright annoying to listen to. Now look, in the correct game, even all of that could work, at least ironically, or if it seemed fitting to the point of the game. But that's the thing, it feels like the characters and dialogue were made with a totally different direction than that of the main story and setting. All the vampire villains are like legitimately despicable pieces of crap when you learn more about them. like using a young child with magic blood as a blood dispensary to become vampires, levels of pieces of crap, like irredeemable monsters. So, do you understand the tonal dissonance of dealing with enemies like that and having someone like Devinder say some utterly stupid crap after like every other kill? It felt like a parody of an actual real existing piece of media. Nothing gelled together. At like 70% into the game, I was so totally checked out that I stopped caring at all about the story. I stopped paying attention to the terrible audio logs and the flashback echoes left throughout the world. Cause after like 7 hours, not one single piece of the story or characters I had experienced so far had managed to grab me or engage me even a little bit. Oh, and there's the music. So I was playing the game while in Discord with friend of the channel, I Need Waffles Tabernacle at some point. Go check out his channel and his amazing Morrowind video, he's way funnier than me. And both of us just kept laughing out loud at how tonally stupid the music was. Every time I was in a safe house or completed a mission, this stupid trap beat would start playing.
Nothing could kill me.
Which fit the game about as much as the personality of the 4 playable characters, that being not at all. Waffles decided to go and quickly throw together an edit, just to emphasize how goofy this was, so he took this music and put it together with a dramatic moment from Dishonored. Have a look at this, and now imagine it happening literally following every time something serious or dramatic happens in Redfall.
Hello, Corvo. Your life has taken a turn, has it not? The Empress is dead. Her precious daughter Emily is lost somewhere in the city, and you will play a pivotal role in the days to come. For this, I have chosen you and drawn you into the void. I am the outsider, and this is my mark. There are forces in the world and beyond, great forces that men call magic. Now, these forces will serve you anew. Use this newfound power, my gift to you.
Yeah, I still crack up every time. I suffered so you don't have to. What more can I say? I feel like by this point you can tell I had a miserable experience playing through this game. Literally the only thing motivating me to the end was the fact that this was a game from Arkane, and I could not believe how far they have fallen. I feel bad even calling it a video game. It was such a bland time, and so little worth remembering even happened that I look forward to this video being finished so I can delete all this footage taking up hundreds of gigs of space on my PC. This dumpster fire isn't just not worth playing, it wasn't even worth releasing in the first place. And as we now all know, even some of the devs agreed with that sentiment. Arkane has torched their reputation in the eyes of many people with this game. Furthermore, with the amount of veteran devs that left the studio, I don't even feel like this is the Arkane we cared about anymore. Go play Weird West instead. That's the game former founder of Arkane, Rafael Colantonio, who was a massive driving force behind Dishonored, has created with his new studio. A studio where a lot of previous Arkane devs also went. Is there anything more tragic than having to keep watching the things you love die the longer you live? I'll miss you, Arkane. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this one, because I didn't. I hated this. I hated playing through this. I hated making this video. It was miserable. But hey, I did it. I survived Redfall, right? So, why not leave me a like, a comment, maybe sub if you haven't. You know, just to repay me back for the horrible time I had making this. I will see you on the next thing, which is hopefully a more positive experience.